to give birth and bake cookies until we died of death or something. And that's really not true. Women had a lot more agency and arguably more control and power and influence in society than they do now, because they ran everything, like the churches, the schools, the communities. They took care of the elderly. They had like a really strong influence socially. They just weren't in the political sphere, and they weren't as much in the financial sphere. Although a lot of places, a lot of instances, women could own property and have money and inherit things and all that stuff too. So a lot of that's been falsely portrayed. Now we tell women, if you aren't a boss bitch, you ain't shit. And I think that's
exactly. So this brings me to my point, which is that masculinizing women is bad, and keeping masculinity for men also bad. This is my point. My point as a cultural feminist. I don't call myself a radical feminist anymore. I've decidedly become a cultural feminist. I think that feminist values are better for society as a whole, which is why I'm pro-soyification for men.
Andrew and Rachel Wilson completely dominate these two feminists over here in a debate about, are men today really less masculine? Rachel and Andrew win right out of the gates with their opening statements, leading them to then discuss, is the less masculinity a good thing? Now, obviously, these two tards over here, these two libtards over here, totally agree that less masculinity is a good thing. But Andrew Wilson and Rachel Wilson bring the facts and the logic and lets them know that they are just plain wrong. Let's see how this debate goes down.
With @ModernDayDebate in the live chat, as well as super chatting a question, in which case we read the super chat questions first and then get to the standard questions. Thank you very much, folks. The floor is all yours. Glad to have all of you here.
Yeah, so this is the second time me and my wife have been on Modern Day Debate and won the debate right at the outset of the debate. Both of our opponents both agree with us. They concede that traditional masculinity is on the decline. As per the debate topic, we win. They conceded.
So should we go? I have better things. I have better things to do.
You lost.
So can I say? I think. Fair enough. If we want to leave it at that, but I think that there's just so many more interesting conversations to be had here. Like when we talk about these different aspects of masculinity that Rachel laid out, like strength, assertiveness, dominance, and competition. I don't think any of these are explicit to men. Any of these, and also none of these are inherently good all the time, and a lot of them manifest in like really bad ways. Like you can be hyper assertive in a way.
I see. So instead of debating whether or not masculinity is on the decline, now we'll pivot and we'll just debate whether or not it being on the decline is good or bad.
Are you scared? Are you scared to debate that? Conversation, yeah. Are you scared to have that conversation?
As long as you guys concede the debate.
I concede that from your perspective, masculinity is on the decline. Absolutely.
Okay, so if we can,
masculinity as you know it, you know it,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
So
I mean, just take a look at this guy right here with his pink cloud background and his pink muscle shirt, and yeah, it is quite clear that masculinity is on the decline. Just by virtue of him just being right there with his pink cloud background, I think
both of you have already conceded the entire debate, and we already won. Whatever you guys would like.
By the way, is that Beetlejuice's daughter right here as a guest moderator? Who is this girl right here?
I'm happy to do.
Yeah. So, like, what? I guess, like, how should we push to remasculize?
Well, I mean, let's just start with
okay. How would you, Andrew and Rachel, how would you describe masculinity?
Well, we already did.
Well, okay, but you didn't give like a list. Like, can we get like a?
I literally gave a list, but I'll give
like
it
the
again.
assertiveness, dominance, and competition one.
Yeah, that's like 3 or 4 things.
That's what the APA considers it to be. But if you guys want to, I mean, I still feel like this is a bit of an unfair fight for you guys, because this is literally like what I do with my life all the time. So if you want to launch into the changes we've seen in society and prove to me that they're good, go for it, because nobody has done that yet.
Well, there's another thing I'd like to bring up real quick. I was taking notes before our epic victory, and one of the things that Coper said was, well, women weren't allowed to be leaders. I want to tell you, Coper, if you have to be allowed to be a leader, you're not a leader. You see how that works? If people have
That's
to
the problem
allow
with
you,
patriarchy.
Yeah.
people have to allow you
Exactly.
That's
to
the
be a
problem.
leader, you're not a leader. That's
Yeah,
how that works.
That's the problem. So you believe that like inherently men should just like lead because what they're bigger?
Well, do you have to be allowed to lead?
Okay, but you think
Do you
So-
do you have to be allowed by a man to lead? Is that what you're saying?
Right now, yeah.
Why?
Okay, so hang on, Andrew.
Because
But,
we
like,
because our
do you
everything
think that
is
black people
built.
can't be leaders?
Of course I can.
Well, how come they had to be allowed to be in leadership positions? They weren't allowed to be in those positions before. So,
Well,
you must-
so
I mean,
so
this is
are
kind of the same argument, right?
were black men always allowed to be leaders in like Africa?
In their own communities.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
Well,
there were.
wait,
Yeah,
well,
I'm sure that they were too.
But that's not the argument.
Well,
right?
sure, but
Well,
females
yeah,
have
it is the
definitely been
argument.
leaders.
Hold on.
Females have been leaders throughout history, though.
Yeah.
Like the Cleopatra. Like, there's plenty of females that are gynocentric governments or communities where they've been allowed.
No.
But in Western civilization, not necessarily.
Well, so why is it that men need to allow women to be leaders?
Because we've been under male regime
Because
for
you
as long
can't-
as we have.
Because you can't do anything about it?
Well, if you like legally codify something,
Is it?
kind of
Well,
hard- you
I
can't-
wanna know.
Like, Andrew,
Is
I
it-
want you to know that if you were born into a situation where you were legally not allowed to do the things that
Mhm.
you've done to like thrive in your life, you probably wouldn't have done those things. Like you might think otherwise. You might think that no, it was so deeply inherent to me that I would have done these things no matter what
Calm
obstacles were in my way.
Can't help it.
Hey, you're welcome to imagine that world, but I don't know. I think it's just kind of silly.
Yeah, calm down. Man.
Before
I know
we
you
go,
took-
before we go into that, just because it's a little bit closer to the topic, I did like that you guys talked about. Is it a bad thing that men are less assertive, less competitive, less dominant? That's something I feel like we should really explore that before we go into whether or not you could say the systematic oppression of women occurred in the
Well,
past.
I mean, I really would like to get an answer to this. Women
This is so
outnumber.
Okay,
Are
well,
you,
no,
are you
here's-
talking about
here's-
women
or are you
outnumber
talking
Let me
about
make it
what are you
simple. I'll
talking
make
about?
it really
Moderator Phil Dunphy right here. He really just has to stay out of this for right now because I think this is actually a good argument. And I think Andrew Wilson's about to bring up a good point about how women outnumber men and yet can't be leaders, can't take control. They have to be allowed.
Wanting an answer.
Andrew, I'll make it very simple.
Okay, make it. simple.
The inherent difference between the sexes is that one can kill the other with their bare hands, right? So it would make sense that that
You have to beg to lead.
not beg to lead,
Beg,
but
you
that,
have to beg.
no, but that after like a
Right.
regime of a male dominated society, that
Mm-hmm.
women now would start to want to equalize.
But
after.
what you're saying is the men, you have to ask the men to make the men step aside so that you can be in charge. Do you understand
well,
what
we
he's
don't
saying?
necessarily have to ask them. I don't think that
Okay,
anyone.
what would we do if we don't ask them and they don't agree with us and give us the permission to lead everything
Well-
and run everything? Like, what are we going to do about it?
Well, in democracy, that's sort of like how you get anything to change. So like that's like everyone sort of like asks permission in a way, I guess. Like
Well,
that's how
no,
you get things
no.
to move
Everything
on.
It started with
everything
critique.
is
It started with,
bad.
early feminist
Yeah,
writers,
wait,
right?
this is like a very like I'm
This is
confused
absurd.
on this
Listen,
point.
I'm gonna. I'll explain it to you.
Oh, thank you.
Everything that is political is backed by force. Everything that is law is backed by force. Everything.
Sure. Are you giving?
Okay.
Are
So
you
what-
saying
so
that
let-
are you advocating for
let
women
me-
to take to
Let
the
me
streets
finish.
and burn?
Stopping shrill immediately. Just give me 10 seconds
Oh,
to make
God.
the point, and then I'll let you respond.
Rachel, you brave woman.
Okay, so where I was at before I was so rudely interrupted was I was expressing that everything that's political is backed by force and everything that is lawful is backed by force, meaning by men. So what she's asking you specifically is if men don't want to give you any authority, what the hell can you do about it? And the answer is
Burn down some buildings, kill
Yeah,
some men, I
nothing.
guess.
nothing. You can't do anything about it, right?
Well, it seems like something was done about it because for a long time, women weren't allowed to like vote. Women weren't allowed to.
That was
eat
nice of you.
Hold on. All right.
I'm
I
glad
am-
you
Yeah,
brought
I'm
that
sure
up.
you are. I'm
So
sure.
now
yeah,
maybe
I know you
maybe I
can
can
vote.
give you guys a little bitty short history lesson on how that happened.
No. Hold on a second. Just before we go completely off topic, is that I do want to hear, is it bad that masculinity is declining? Because this is
Yeah.
totally off topic. So Is it good or is it
Yes.
bad?
I think
guys
it's good
stand?
that masculinity is being redefined and reimagined, and
It's
I think it's really generally good to critique and make sure that you're.
Hold on, okay, just not everybody at the
Wait,
same
really
freaking
quick,
time.
before
All right,
we get
no,
back
hold
on
a second.
topic,
Not everybody at the exact same time, so we can actually hear you.
Okay.
Just
Go
that
ahead.
side.
I was just going to say that I think it's generally good to look at society and say what are the rigid structures and what are good things about them and what are bad things about them and how can we improve them. And I think for a long time, one of those structures was that women were property and women were not allowed to participate in society in a lot of different ways. And if you ask those women, some of them might have been fine with it, but a lot of them were like, no, this kind of sucks ass. Actually, this is like really lame.
That's not correct.
Okay,
so
maybe not.
You all have talked. You all have talked a whole bunch. I haven't talked.
Okay,
that's not true. In my book, I talk about the fact that at the time that they were trying to pass suffrage for women, it took so long. This push for it started in like the 1830s, 1840s. It took almost 100 years because women didn't want it. Only about 4% of women in 1919 wanted anything to do with voting or civil service. Number one, they said we're too busy. In fact, there's pamphlets you can go Google where you can find where the anti-suffrage groups, which far outnumbered the suffrage groups, listed out all the reasons the women themselves thought that this was bad. And they said, we're too busy. We have homes, churches, communities to take care of. We have elderly to take care of, children to take care of. We like planning parties and having a good time and being with our families. We don't want to go to murder trials and hear the grisly details and have to do civil service. We don't want to have to keep up with politics. Politics was then and is now considered something that's kind of gross and yucky and stupid and kind of crude, right? Politics is dirty business. Women didn't want anything to do with that. So no, the whole point is that feminism was never this grassroots groundswell of women who just looked around one day and went, hey, we're being oppressed. This
wasn't a brand new
sucks.
idea, sure.
This sucks. I wanna do military service. I want a corner office and a suit with shoulder pads, and I don't want to spend all day with my children at home. I want to join a corporation and pay taxes, and I want to enlist in the military. And no, women didn't want that then, and they largely do not now, which is why you have such a hard time with your egalitarian dream.
I don't think anyone wants to do that.
Women don't want to enter STEM. Women don't want to run Fortune 500 companies. They don't want to.
Neither do most men.
Yeah, no, you're wrong. You're right. So like same thing with military. Lots of men are ultra violent. That's a masculine feature. And they literally join the military. And one of the reasons that they'll give as a cause for joining the military is that they wanted to kill people. Not kidding. Yeah, it's not a joke.
And that is a great thing. Yeah, that's super cool.
It's a great
That's good for society.
I mean, it's a great thing if you want to have your borders defended from foreign nationals who will come in and literally kill you. It's a good thing to have those people, isn't it?
If we do have people like expressing those traits, we should probably try to put them in positions where they're productive with them. Please, can I respond to something like Rachel, what Rachel said? Not, it's one main thing. Like the problem is, if you talk about how all these women didn't want it, well, a lot of other women did want it, and those ones, yeah. Well, those tiny women opened the door for a lot of other women to realize, hey, that actually seems like a good thing. And then once the cat's out of the bag, good luck putting it back in. I mean, actually, bad luck. I really don't want you. I'm the reason I'm here is I don't want you to be able to do that, right? Anyway, that's
okay.
Man, Radical Coper completely losing it, coping in real time. I like that the only excuse that this girl had, which by the way, is this the girl that I recently did a video on that was like a former Destiny orbiter that Andrew Wilson was talking to? It looks a lot like her. I don't know. They all look alike though, so who knows? But the only thing they fall back on is, well, a lot of men didn't want to do it either. I mean, yeah, true. Not all men want to become CEOs of companies. But the fact of the matter is that men do have duties to provide and take care of their family, and therefore they have to go to work or figure out a way to earn a decent living to take care of not only themselves, but their whole family. Women had it nice. They didn't have to worry about it. They just had to worry about staying home and taking care of the household and the family and their husband and their children.
We should do what James suggested and jump over to discussing whether or not this is a good thing. Let's take a look at the last 100 years and see how it's worked out. I just posted a piece to my Substack yesterday called, "How's that feminism working out for you?" Turns out it fucking sucks. And we have a whole bunch of data that proves it. If you look at things like marriage and divorce rates, children who are being raised in single parent homes below the poverty level, what happens when you move step parents into the house and how the instance of child abuse goes through the roof at that point. The amount of women who can't cope with trying to have a full-time career because they've had it pounded into their head since they were infants, like I did, that you're a fucking loser if you don't have a corporate job and if you're not making your own money and you can't depend on a man for anything. But they also want to have kids. It's a biological drive we have to have children. So now we have to do everything, right? So then it's like, well, now we're unhappy with the man because the man isn't naturally jumping in and doing all the housework stuff, that he's not doing the dishes. He doesn't mop the floor correctly. So everyone gets divorced. 70% of divorces are initiated by the women. Among college educated women, that goes up to 90%. Women hold the vast majority of college debt. So now most women go into their childbearing years with tens of thousands of dollars of debt, and they think, how the hell am I ever going to pay that? I guess I can't afford to have kids. So now the birth rates are dropping. Then you could look at a million other things like rates of alcohol and drug abuse, childhood poverty because of single parenthood. You can look at family courts. Everything is a mess. No one is doing better. We have trans kids, for God's sakes. So the past 100 years, the slippery slope, we have just right down the slippery slope, straight into hell. So please tell me, make the argument for how this is so good for everybody.
I mean, yeah, everything Rachel just said is 100% correct. We don't realize in society today how things can kind of snowball into bigger things or just kind of lead to different things. And yeah, these are great points that she brings up about how, because like for instance, the woman being in college debt, then they're like, well, I can't afford this. And then they don't have children. Essentially being forced to be being workers forever unless they find a man that makes a really good living. It's stuff like this. This is why these conversations are good to have, because I don't think us as a society has really thought about this snowball effect, that how everything has led to how pretty much how it started with this, and then it's led to all these other issues, these much bigger issues, which when you add them all together are actually really big problems in our society. What do you guys think about this so far? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you think Andrew Wilson and Rachel Wilson are completely kicking some ace. Let's continue.
The gender roles, to invert the social order, to tell men they can be women, women they can be men. Everyone's the same, and it's all just a social construct. Please, please defend.
Well, I will say, no one's saying everyone's the same. If you talk to I mean, this is definitely a side note, but if we talk about like the trans stuff, I mean, no one's saying that like cis men are trans men, or that cis women are trans women. In fact, we're saying that those are like two categories that exist, and that it's okay that those two categories exist. That I know you guys don't think it's okay that those two categories exist, but that's.
Do you have a point? Get to your point, dude.
I'll leave it at the trans thing for now, but
you literally didn't address a single thing.
Okay, fine. So I think that like a lot of the issues that Rachel listed off are going to be issues with like I mean, frankly, with capitalism, like people having to work for money, people having to work to survive it all, like in the way that we do, like in those structures that exist, like people born in situations and the way that they have to deal with that. You talked about like women being the primary seekers of divorce. Like, what's your alternative? They shouldn't be allowed to get divorced. I don't know how that's like a good, how like forcing women to stay in marriages that they fucking don't want to be.
Yeah, in. Like the 50s, like the 50s where women were just getting like beat by their husbands and like couldn't do anything.
No, stay there because
that's not
society's going to fall apart if you leave.
That's an absolute trope and a stereotype. You've been watching too much TV. That's not true.
My grandparents grew up in the 50s. They watched their fucking moms get beat. They got beat. Their dads
everyone got beat. So
hold on, just here, everybody, one at a time.
None of the men cared about their wives, their mothers, their daughters. They were all just running around beating the shit out of all the women. You really think that?
No, I didn't say that.
And you don't think.
She absolutely did say that. She made a blanket statement that back then, all the husbands were just beating their wives, pretty much. And yeah, absolutely. This is just nothing but utter indoctrination nonsense that these two are just spewing. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just going by all the stereotypes that they've heard, that yeah, back in the 50s women were treated like property and the husbands just beat the crap out of them. And by the way too, this their whole stupid argument started by this dude saying that, oh, so women shouldn't just be allowed to get divorced. That's not what Rachel and Andrew said. They didn't say, no, women should not get divorced. The argument was that women are asking for divorce at higher rates than men are. That's what they argued. But now they have no argument for it. So then they have to just bring in this total straw man of, oh, what? So they're not allowed to get divorced then? Beat our wives? Property? 50s? Women like chattel?
I think that there was exception for divorce because of things like abuse, abandonment, insanity, and addiction.
Sure,
Yes,
but do you think
and it wasn't hard to get a divorce prior to no fault divorce for those reasons.
Sure.
What we have now is divorce because Sally doesn't feel sexy and the neighbor makes her feel sexy. So she's going to dump the kid's dad. Sorry, kids, daddy has to leave because Mr. Johnson next door makes mommy feel sexy. That's what we have now. That's why women get divorced. Not because they're getting beat.
Women are getting divorced to fuck their neighbors, not to.
Well, they're not getting.
Yes, they
Listen,
need to go find themselves.
They're not getting divorced because their husbands are sitting there beating the shit out of them. It's ridiculous.
No, that's a tiny minority.
The most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I don't. Did I make that claim that most women get divorced because they're getting beat? I don't remember making that claim.
This is the same stupid, snarky feminist bullshit you always hear where they go. Back in the 50s, where the men with top hats would go home to their perfect hourglass wives and just beat the holy shit out of them because the pot roast wasn't.
Anyway, I think we're getting. I do want to. We're moving a bit. Let's get back on the.
Lav is right. It's something I was just going to say is theoretically, I don't want to take sides. I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying theoretically, if I was on your side, Radical Coder or Lav, a possible response might be, is it the case that the increases in divorce or the other things that happened, as Rachel mentioned, are actually the result of declining masculinity rather than some other cause?
So I was just about to say, obviously, I think that we all believe in social conditioning, right? Obviously, if you grow up and you don't think that voting is even an option, or you don't worry about it, you're taught to, can goods and, that you will be a mother. It's just like, that's like the idea that you're going to have in your brain, right? It's the same thing. Like Rachel, you just brought up how, your family was upset with you, or you were upset with your family for trying to socially condition you into this like feminist society, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that there are certainly reasons, if you can convince all of Jonestown to kill themselves, with poison, I think you can convince a generation or generations of women over social conditioning that they shouldn't want to vote, right?
Well,
so I think
them with machine guns.
Sure, but I think that point is a little mute because I think that there were plenty of women who did want to vote. And to be fair, like Rachel, I'm a tradcon wife at heart. I don't want to fucking work. I don't want to debate. I don't want to do all these things, but I acknowledge that some women do want to do those things. And I think that they should be free to do those things.
Yeah, where are all those women?
It's literally me. And
they are nowhere close to you, Andrew. They are avoiding you.
Well, they're all.
Yeah, frankly, they don't want to talk to you.
It's funny. I think that they're all looking at their cats, and they're very upset.
I have 3 cats, and
I'm sure you do.
And I'm also engaged.
So here's the thing that these people like. I've seen enough of these debates that these freaking people like them. Like they always go to like they think we're trying to force people into like we're gonna make it illegal to be a working woman or something like that. It's like no, not exactly. What people like Andrew and Rachel are trying to do are trying to make it society wise, like bring back values to society, certain values that we've had before. Doesn't mean we're gonna like put women in jail if they want to be the CEO of a company or something. But the last however many or so years, there has been this societal this cultural shift to where we're gonna not just accept that there are women that work, but we're gonna push and put this idea into their heads, as like this girl was saying. You can use social conditioning, and right now there have been social conditioning saying that not only can women work, but they should work. And if they want to be a stay-at-home wife, I mean, yeah, that's fine, but really they should strive to go to work. They should strive to be the CEOs, girl bosses, we're going to infuse this in the movies and the TV shows and put out all this propaganda to change the culture to where now it's not, oh, men go to work and earn the living and women stay home. Now it's women could do whatever the heck they want. And also, by the way, men are also really toxic masculinity. So we're going to demonize male behavior and uplift any female behavior and pretty much say it's acceptable for women to do anything they want. And men, we're going to demonize a lot of what they do. And so we're going to pretty much demasculinize men to where we get people like Radical Coper, and we're going to uplift these women, and we're going to push women that they could be girl bosses. They should be girl bosses, CEOs. Their goals shouldn't be to grow up and get married and raise a family. Their goals should be to be a CEO of a company. And that as a whole has been destructive for society. Are women as a whole as fulfilled or happy as they were? Has it led to any growth or happiness in women? Like, no. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm willing to bet that it hasn't. And men are also more miserable too.
So what's your point?
You're right. Your point about social conditioning is correct. And what has happened is we went from one extreme, allegedly. I have a ton of information in my book where I make the argument that life was not that way. All of female history has been rewritten by gender studies professors who portray it that way. That life was this brutish, slavish, horrible existence for women. We were all chained to a stove, made to give birth and bake cookies until we died of hearth death or something. And that's really not true. Women had a lot more agency and arguably more control and power and influence in society than they do now, because they ran everything, like the churches, the schools, the communities. They took care of the elderly. They had like a really strong influence socially. They just weren't in the political sphere, and they weren't as much in the financial sphere. Although a lot of places, a lot of instances, women could own property and have money and inherit things and all that stuff too. So a lot of that's been falsely portrayed. Now we tell women, if you aren't a boss bitch, you ain't shit. And I think that's
exactly. So this brings me to my point, which is that masculinizing women is bad, and keeping masculinity for men also bad. This is my point. My point as a cultural feminist. I don't call myself a radical feminist anymore. I've decidedly become a cultural feminist. I think that feminist values are better for society as a whole, which is why I'm pro-soification for men, right? When we enter this technological age where, things like drones are going to do most of like the military work or things like that, you don't need the brute force masculine energy that we once needed. I think it was great for what it was. I think in the 50s, it was great. I think before we had computers, before we had robots that could do all these things for us, it was incredible. But now we're moving towards
who builds all them drones and robots and weapons? Who does all that?
So now that you're trying to take us on a detour again, Andrew, and I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to allow it.
Why? Just say who does it.
Now that we're moving.
Answer my question.
Just to hear. You asked the question, Andrew. Let's hear from Lav.
Is she going to answer it?
Well, I'm going to finish what I was saying first.
Yeah, you're not going to answer it.
Now that we're moving towards this technological age, regardless of who made the robots, it's great that like mostly men made these robots, right?
No, it's all men.
Yeah, that's great.
Mostly, maybe.
No, it's pretty much all men.
Incredible. Yeah. And also it was only socially acceptable for men to be scientists for the last 100 years, right? While women were at home raising children.
It's not true.
Well,
did you come up with that idea that women weren't allowed to be scientists?
It's not that they weren't allowed to. It's just social conditioning. So when your parents
a lot of women also just weren't allowed to.
Rachel, your wife just literally said that social conditioning is like
true. That's true. But unfortunately, we have a ton of data from like Nordic countries where they've been pushing STEM for like 70 years. And we've actually found that
women regress.
Less women wanted to go into STEM.
No, I'm not. Okay, great. I'm not. The debate is not whether or not men have more like logical.
Like these people just think it's purely social conditioning, and that there is no natural urge on the part of women and men to do these roles. They think that all of society just one day came up with, we're like, all right, everyone got together in a big hurdle and was like, all right, women gonna stay home, men work, break. And then that was it. And then we just went from there. When in reality, like, no, like the biological urge has a lot to do with it as well.
Brains. I think that is a great aspect of masculinity that is like really dope.
But you say we don't
keep that.
Well, what you're saying
I'm
is
talking about like the brute
okay,
energy,
so let
but
me
like
respond
women
to it.
also can.
Are you ever going to finish?
I mean, I guess not, because
like
you won't even let me finish
how
a
long do you
point.
Let's
take?
give
Go
Lav
ahead.
another, maybe
Is this
like
what
another
happens?
20.
This is what happens when men see that you have a point. They're like, they try to gaslight you into being like, oh, you can. I mean, we don't have to have this discussion. I wanted to have this discussion because I think that there's a bridge that
Just
can
give
be
me
made.
the thumbs up when you're done so that I can respond to it, because you made a bunch of
I don't see a
hypocritical
point
points.
anymore.
Well,
I
so
don't
the
see a point
first
anymore.
hypocrisy is you said, well, we don't need all this toxic masculinity. It's super
I never
super
said
evil.
toxic masculinity.
Okay, whatever. We need soy
said brutish.
boys, brutish, whatever. Because we have drones and we have robots and we have all these neat things.
Mhm.
All that were made by men who probably were masculine men. You want to take away the same driving motivation that created the same things you want to
Masculine men.
replace them with.
Okay, wait.
might
So
have been
who's to
eggheads
say?
like me,
do you
right?
think any of these scientists who are making these? I think most of the I don't know if you've ever met a scientist, but most of them aren't like masculine men.
I don't think you know anything about robotics at all, but that's
Do
a
you?
field. Yeah, I'm a roboticist.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm a roboticist. And let me tell you, that's hard ass physical labor. Okay. Machine maintenance has motor. I've worked on robots.
Your
that
job's
have,
going to be taken by
that
a
have
robot soon. Isn't that
700.
crazy?
No,
No.
never.
It's not like
You don't know
that.
anything about robots. You have no idea
He's
what you're
the
talking
person
about.
that builds and repairs the robots, and some of them are the size of a house.
Yeah,
They're in
so,
giant
listen,
factories.
huge, massive. You think that this is something that's not physically intense labor? You're insane. You have no idea what you're talking about. Do you know what drone repair is like? What
Wait,
war
why are we
drones
going
are
off on
like?
this detour
Because
again?
because you literally just got done telling me that masculinity should be replaced by robotics and by machines and by all the things that masculine men build.
No. I just think that I'm saying that a rephrasing or a redefinition of masculinity is important when we don't need like a brutish man anymore. A strong man, great. A strong man, great.
Well, what's a brutish man?
You said like someone who wants to kill.
You mean like members of our armed forces and special forces and people that we utilize in order to keep you safe at night?
Sure.
A lot of them
We
also
don't- we don't need
probably
them
think
in-
they
we
want to
don't-
kill until
we don't
they're in
need
the
them
right situation,
anymore.
and then they have,
No,
like,
it's
they have
not that we don't need that anymore. It's just that
So
like
we
it's
need
not
brutish
becoming
men.
a human thing anymore.
So we need
no.
so we need brutish
Who
men.
runs into burning buildings to save people? Who runs into floodwaters and hurricanes and saves
Women,
people?
clearly
At
women.
this point, I mean,
Big,
men and women
strong,
do these
physically
jobs. There are
strong
female
men.
firefighters.
No,
So,
women
like,
can't
there
do
just
that.
are. There
No.
are
They
women who are
physically
firefighters.
can't.
What do you mean they
do
can't? They
that.
are.
Yeah, they
Like,
physically
exist.
can't.
No,
they
they're not.
physically
They
can't
no
carry you
female
out.
firefighters.
What
Hold
about
on,
what
just to
about
be sure,
nurses?
okay, there's
what
too many
about
at-
what about
too many at a
nurses
time.
that save lives every single day? They're not running
Okay,
into
but
burning
Lots of them are
buildings.
men.
that's beside the point, though.
You
That's
said
beside
what?
the point. You don't think there's a need for physically strong, brave people who are willing
No,
to, who
nobody
can
said
just
that.
like risk
What?
everything?
Yeah, I
and
don't say.
save
I didn't
people?
say that.
Well, then
But
what
we-
is brutish? What is brutish? Just saying that a man has a drive to kill, that's obviously very useful in society. What the hell is wrong with that?
Is that useful? How is that useful? In
I
society?
just
Not
gave
that
you.
raw, like that
How many
raw
times
and-
do I have to give you the example of the
I guess
United
another
States
time,
military?
Andrew.
And you say over and over again, yes, we do need them for that. Yes, that's true. We need them for that. So you just
No,
keep
I don't
agreeing
think
with
we
me.
want a bloodthirsty military.
needed them for that. We like I just said, there are like drones and cyborgs and androids being created so that we don't need men to do shit like
You-
that.
Okay,
You have
this is
no-
the city people thing.
What?
This is people that have lived in urban areas their whole life. They have no idea what real life is like outside of a city. They
I
just
lived in
need the food.
Utah.
Yeah, did you live out in the country where people produce
Yes.
food?
Yes,
Then how do you not know that
I
we
lived
don't
on a
have
farm.
we do not have machines that do everything. We still need big ass strong men to do a lot of things in this world.
We
It's
needed
not-
men for that same. We needed men to butcher cows, and now we
Yeah,
have
but we
machines that
still
butcher
do.
cows.
Yeah, who puts
No,
them?
the guys
Wait,
have
wait.
to run all that
So
stuff.
all of this shit that you're
Men
saying.
have
It's
to
also
run
female
those.
butchers.
Yes, stop.
Men have to run those.
They
I'll
do.
explain this
Are
to
the
you.
women going to stun the cattle so they can be slaughtered? No. Are the women going to be trash men? Are they
They
going to clean
can.
sewers?
Yeah.
They're not going to. Women don't want to be
We
trash.
should open it up so they're allowed to.
I don't
At
think
least we should
most.
push
I don't
for
think
people to be
most
allowed to make
men
these
want to
choices.
do that.
Hey,
No,
hey,
you're
hang on,
wrong.
hang on.
You
Rachel,
think women want to
Rachel,
climb
did you
cell
know?
phone towers?
Did you know that cows just walk into machines and butcher themselves. I didn't know that. This is
Did
news
I say
to me.
that?
I do.
Okay.
One thing I want to talk
Yeah.
about. Hold on.
Can women
One
work
sec.
on oil
Okay.
rigs? This is rookie shit, you guys. Can women work on oil rigs?
One thing I want
The
to I want to
strongest
jump
of
in.
Yeah, there's a lot of men that have to do dangerous jobs. I mean, I've seen videos of on YouTube where like there was this one case of men, they have to go like man, they had to like repair a pipe, like an underwater pipe that went underwater, and something happened and they all got sucked into the pipe. All men, they got sucked into the pipe. It was complete it was pitch black. It was like a whole controversy too, by the way. I'm not gonna get deep into this, but they all got sucked into the pipe. They were in complete darkness, and pretty much all of them passed away because they couldn't get out because they were trapped in water where a lot of them drowned. Only one of them escaped. That's the type of risky jobs that men have to do. There wasn't robots to do that. There wasn't robots to do that. Men still had to do that manual labor. It was a really risky job. And she says, perfect screenshot, by the way. But, she says, well, a lot of men don't want to do these jobs. Yeah, you're right. A lot of men don't want to do these jobs. But men have to do these jobs because no one else is going to. And women can't do a lot of these jobs. And what I mean by that, I don't mean legally or anything. I mean physically. Rachel and Andrew completely dominated this debate against these two morons, Radical Coper and Lav. Again, just spewing out rhetoric after rhetoric that they've heard and that they've been told to by the feminist propaganda. But yet, and then at some point, like this girl right here concedes that, yeah, listen, we shouldn't demasculinize men. And listen, I'm a trad wife at heart. I want to stay home and do all this stuff. But then the very next sentence will be like, however, I'm pro the soification of masculinity and all these things, and women should do this. It's like, well, make up your mind, lady. Like, which one are you for? Do you think demasculinization is a bad thing or a good thing? Make freaking sense. Rachel and Andrew are completely 100% correct here. And these two couldn't even make their case because obviously they are completely 100% incorrect. Great job by Rachel and Andrew, but what did you guys think about this debate? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you enjoyed watching this. And if you really enjoyed watching this, please consider subscribing to my channel. It'll help me out a lot. I got a bunch more debates like this featuring Andrew Wilson and his wife Rachel, and a whole bunch more debates on my channel on politics that I think you'll really enjoy.